Good morning, Gamecocks. It's JC Shurburtt here with Wednesday's episode of Coffee. It's February 5th, the year of our Lord 2025. And Wednesday, it's a hump day. So Wednesday's a better day than Tuesday, right? That caused a lot of conversation yesterday. Nevertheless, good to be with you today here on Coffee. We do take requests from our audience at times, and I got a request yesterday for today's topic. I figured I'd roll it out. Kind of a slow time. Today is the second National Signing Day, and the one that they've successfully obliterated because of the recruiting calendar. I'm not going to stroll down memory lane or anything with you guys here this morning, but man, I just was thinking the other day just how busy I used to be. Gosh, the whole time I worked in college football recruiting for more than a decade. January was the month, and as more and more players enrolled early, and then they changed the signing day, it was a big surprise the first time they did it. It actually, Nick Saban in Alabama, one of the very few times he kind of got caught with his pants down because what Alabama would do, they'd have this really good season, and then in January they go try to flip 4 or 5 guys, and everybody signed unexpectedly. 80% of the guys signed that year. And that was the one year Bama finished with the number 8 recruiting class in the country instead of 1 or 2. And I think a lot of those guys still ended up in the NFL and were pretty good players that they recruited to Bama at that time. But the next year, he was on it, but he mentioned that. And so Will Muschamp was the coach here at the time, and the Gamecocks actually did sign all their players then. And we've had some good Januaries where there were players to track, a handful here and there. Jordan Birch was one that committed early but didn't sign, and that was a bunch of drama. Should have maybe been some foreshadowing there, but we wish Jordan the best. And then there was Nick Harbor, and that was big. That Nick Harbor thing in 2023, the Gamecocks were coming off of a breakthrough ending of the season under Beamer. They had beaten Clemson and Tennessee back to back. The game with Notre Dame and the Gator Bowl was one of the highest rated games for bowl games. Very exciting game. Gamecocks lost, but the whole country saw a sea of garnet and black down there. And then you get to January where not everybody gets any pub, and Nick Harbor's sitting out there and is by far the top rated player available. And the Gamecocks fight this battle for Oregon with him. I remember I woke up, got a text, he's going to Oregon. 2 hours later, well, wait a minute, and went back and forth. But it was exciting, right? Now it's not much excitement. Donovan Murph's having a signing ceremony today at Irmo. That's good, but we all know where he's going, and you should be excited about him, but not much excitement. So we're going to just spin it forward to the class of 2026 and look at the most important position every single cycle. Is this the biggest need in 2026? No, I think it's defensive tackle, clearly. And I'd like, all things considered, it'd be good to get a good high school running back in, too. You don't want to become too portal dependent on players. You want to have a blend, I believe, at South Carolina. And they've done a good job of that. There's just, when you go 0 for 4 in the 2022 class at D tackle, and then you lose some battles like for Amari Adams in state, and then the state kind of dried up. Then, gosh, that 1 year where Jimmy Lindsey left and then Travian came in, South Carolina finished second on like 4 really good D tackles. A lot of them were from North Carolina, and they all went to Georgia. So Georgia's loaded up, and I need to check and see how many of those guys are still at Georgia. I think quite a few. And then Xavier McLeod left and went to Georgia, and he's playing down there. Saw him against Notre Dame. So they actually have 3, Ingram Dawkins, who I think declared for the draft, Monroe Freeling at tackle, and then Xavier McLeod, 3 South Carolina players playing for Kirby Smart's program. But quarterback's very, very important, the most important position on the field. I think I don't know that I mentioned we were talking about quarterbacks today, but that's what we're going to do. We say it all the time. If you don't have a quarterback, you're dead. Mike Morgan, who you know from the show, from JC and Morgan, he preaches that. He's kind of the person that got me on to that. I've always known it, but now more than ever, NFL, college, football in general, if you don't have a good quarterback, you're going to struggle on offense, And you better be really good, everywhere else if you have even a mediocre situation back there. You want to know what happened to Kentucky this past year? They put all their, or really the past couple of years, they put all their eggs in the transfer that didn't work out. Uh, Will Levis did, and then Leary did not, and then Vandergriff was a disaster. And they got Zach Calzada. Gosh, I wish I'd have written that down. I didn't know I was going to talk about him today. The kid from Texas A&M that led Jimbo's team to the win over Alabama, kind of a miracle win back in the day in Aggie land. He's there, and I think he'll be better than the last two, just to be honest. He probably is not coming in with the hype, and it's probably a here we go again with that fan base, but I think he's a little bit better player, I think. But anyway, if you don't have one, you're dead. You can't worry about who you have. South Carolina, I think, takes the right approach with this. They're very high school focused on their quarterback recruiting, but they're not afraid to go in the portal either. Spencer Rattler obviously was a portal player. Jason Brown the year before, a portal player. They had Robbie Ashford at backup quarterback as a portal player, and they got Aaron Noland in the portal this year. So they are not afraid to hit that either, but it's good to get a high school guy every class. So what do they have on campus now? Obviously, Lenore Sellers. I'm not going to mention Lenore Sellers a whole lot here because the focus is on what's behind him and what's coming behind him for the post Sellers era, because this is when you do it. This is the class of 2026 is when you start preparing for when Lenore Sellers goes to the NFL. I mean, and it may be as soon as after next season. So you recruit one every single year as best you can, the best you can. And sometimes you find guys that you like and they're good enough for that cycle and they're pretty good. Sellers was a late pickup, amazingly enough. I want to thank Dylan Lonergan, who was favoring South Carolina, that decided he'd go be Bama's second quarterback in that class and hit the portal again, by the way. I think he went to Boston College. Was going to play baseball out there, but didn't go to Carolina, went out to Alabama, and he's already left. And that's who South Carolina wanted in the class. Well, they didn't get him. And then Satterfield, I don't think was too fired up about Lenoris for whatever reason. The dude was having a huge year. And I said I wasn't going to talk about Lenoris, but I'm going to fill you in right here real quick. Dowell Loggins comes in and immediately wants him and flipped him from Syracuse. And it was not, again, one of those text messages. It was not as cut and dry as he's definitely coming to Carolina. So I wake up in a cold sweat about several things in my life. Sometimes at night thanking God that it didn't go the way that maybe we wanted at the time. One has to do with a female I used to date because I've never met my beautiful new wife. Glad that didn't work out, although I was sad at the time it did. Two is I'm glad I walked away from the newspaper business in 2004 and went online because that's a dying business. And then three is I'm glad Dylan Lonergan didn't commit to South Carolina and Lenore Sellers ends up at Syracuse. Just, that's, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek. Obviously, football's not as important as the other two things, but that was one of those things. He comes in, I think in general under Beamer, South Carolina's done a good job recruiting portal and high school quarterbacks. Obviously, some guys, Brandon Davis and Tanner Bailey left, and Bailey left football, and I think he's going to go back and play at Auburn this year, and that's good for him. He's a good player. So even Marcus Satterfield did a good job recruiting this position. They got Rattler in, obviously, who's great. And then Dowell, brings in, I think Dante Reno may have committed pre-Dowell. But Cutter Woods is going to be really good. So let's kind of, reshuffle the deck, lay it all out. Here's what they got. So you got Sellers. That's it. Put that to bed. Gamecocks got Aaron Noland out of the portal this year. I can report to you that the NIL money was very fair and good. It didn't cost as much as you'd think. That's not why they got him, though. They got him because they like him. And Darren Usher had a relationship with him from the days at Auburn, and he's got a good arm. He's a lefty. It's a little different, but Mike Shula likes him. And he's going to battle for the backup job this year with Dante Reno, who's still there. a freshman last year. And folks, I know Dante did not look that good in the spring game. I know Dante, people are wondering about him. He's a true freshman. He's a true freshman this past year. He's a good kid. He's got a live arm. And I think it kind of goes back to the All-Star game. I think he was an Under Armour, did not look swell. Trevor Lawrence didn't look good in the Army game. I mean, I've told the story about my friend and I at 24/7 Sports dropping Jameis Winston. That was the most idiotic thing I've ever done because of practice performances at the All-Star game. I think they're a great tool. Don't get me wrong. They matter, and you want to go evaluate and do that. But my point is, it doesn't always turn out that way. It's like a good player in the NFL not having a good combine or not having a good pro day, and he may drop a couple of rounds, but he still ends up being an all-pro or whatever. So, don't dismiss Dante Reno. Remember, it's developmental. And remember, this kid was a Pied Piper recruit and helped the Gamecocks put a class together and get players there, and is a great teammate and still has a strong arm and is a coach's son. And there's a lot of things to like about him. Will he be the backup this year? He's going to compete for it, so we'll see. He's just inexperienced and has to develop. I mean, I was thinking about him today, and I started thinking I'll give you a Clemson and a South Carolina example. Nobody thought Cullen Harper was going to start at Clemson, and he did. It ended up being pretty good by the time he started. Nobody thought Dylan Thompson was going to start at South Carolina, and he did. And ended up, I think he holds the record for passing yards in a season, about 3,500, broke Todd Ellis's record, or Tannehill's, one of those two, in 2014. Now, I don't think anybody would have thrown Dylan Thompson back, after the plays he made through his career. So don't count Dante Reno out. I've heard a lot of things. People just dismiss him, and it's one thing to say, in my opinion, I don't think Dante Reno is going to be the backup. I think it'll be Aaron Nolan. I think it's a valid opinion. I probably agree with you. But this trashing him and stuff, I mean, come on. Y'all, people that are doing that, you're better than that, right? Come on. So he's still in the mix, still there. And I think has some tools, and we'll see. And I don't know that I necessarily would put money on him ever starting at South Carolina, but I can't rule it out because Dylan Thompson in the opener in 2012 looked like the backup quarterback from Necessary Roughness when they had to put him in against Vandy. It was a disaster, and Connor Shaw in 2012 kind of had injuries off and on all year. And then lo and behold, Dylan has to start the Clemson game. And I remember texting someone, and they're like, Clemson's going to win by 3 touchdowns because they're not going to, because of that memory, right? Well, then Dylan Thompson wins the Clemson game. So there you go. That's Dante Reno. I mentioned Aaron Nolan, a lefty, ultra talented guy, top 10 quarterback. Some people had him 5 stars. He was at least a high 4 per 24/7 Sports composite. From Atlanta, mobile enough, but not a runner. He's a passer, but really good arm. And what I like about him, and what I've heard about him, is he's a competitor. Like he's got some like Robbie Ashford level competitiveness in him. And that's one great thing about Robbie Ashford. The skill sets are completely different. Aaron Nolan's not going to run like Robbie. Robbie's not going to throw like Air, but they both have that dog mentality. And that's one thing to really like about Aaron Nolan is he's coming in to compete. He loves to win. He loves to make plays to win. He's got kind of a gunslinger. There's a lot of things, with his high school teams, he almost trusts his arm too much, from what I'm told and what I saw. But they can coach that. That's something Mike Shula will have to work with him on, obviously. But he's coming to town, and that was a big pickup. That could be sneaky good. Plus, he's got a cool name, Air. As someone that came of age in the 90s, as far in the rearview mirror as that decade is, and I'm glad from Carolina football standpoint that it is, because that decade sucked. But big Michael Jordan guy here. You get me in the Michael LeBron debate, and I'm going Air Jordan. Love it. So love Air, love that name, love to breathe air, whatever you want to say. But I think that's good. Great name, good player, good kid. I think someone that could take the reins of the program, the offense, the leader of the football team, and succeed at a high level. Plus, when you look at Aaron Nolan, and if he is the starter and his future, and he is a good passer, you sort of see this offense evolving in the future because South Carolina's recruited so well and continues to recruit well at receiver. All those receivers are going to come of age, so you're gonna kind of see a more. South Carolina's going to end up down having a really good passing game down the road. I think they will next year, to be honest, but who knows? So Aaron Nolan came in from the transfer portal, and then there's Cutter Woods, another winner. I know his quarterback coach personally because he was my quarterback when I was in high school and junior high. Caught my only touchdown of my football career in junior high at the old reservation in Gaffney for Brian Lane, D.R. Hill Middle School. Head coach at Westside, kind of got a raw deal at Burns. He was the coach at Burns with Woodruff. He was at South Florence for a year. And I know some of our South Florence fans left after a year. And he goes to Woodruff, Spartanburg County. Got the Burns job, and Bobby Bentley left to go to Auburn. Had one bad year, and they said bye. And they haven't really been all that super duper since. He goes to Clover, wins there. Then goes to Westside, wins state championship, and then was in it again this year. Lost to the aforementioned South Florence Bruins. So that guy can coach. He can coach quarterbacks. His son was a receiver at Virginia Tech. He can develop them. Trust me, I know. I know this guy. He is outstanding. And Cutter Woods has been outstanding and is a winner. Good arm, knows how to win football games again, and can run a little too. Cutter's got some mobility. And so I think, flipping him from Wake Forest, Dowell Loggins did that, was smart. And if you remember, Dave Clawson was still at Wake. Dave Clawson's sneaky good at evaluating quarterbacks. That's the type of guy that Wake used to get. And they redshirt him. And in a couple of years, you're like, where'd they get this guy? And if recent history held up, he'd eventually be at Notre Dame because Notre Dame loves to go to the littler schools on Tobacco Road and take the quarterback. They've done it the last 2 years. So Cutter, I think, has got a future. Now, what's going to happen with him this year, I don't know. It's tough. I think they probably prefer not to have a true freshman backup. So I think it'll be one of the two redshirt freshmen in Aaron Noland or Dante Reno, Heinlein or Sellers. But Cutter Woods was a sneaky good pickup and another in-state guy. So we've kind of reset the board. So now I'll tell you, like 2026. And this is a good thing. And I've said this a couple of times because you look in South Carolina, it's basically right now. Now, there could be somebody else that pops up. Don't get me wrong. You're right now, you're still in the casting a wide net part of recruiting. They're not going to, a good quarterback, they'll offer. They haven't really set on one guy, but you got 3 top 10 quarterbacks, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, that are interested. And it's funny because all 3 of these guys have previously been committed, including one to South Carolina. And that's the first one I'm going to talk about. Tom Loy from thebigspur.com mentioned Landon Duckworth from Jackson, Alabama, 6'3", 190, number 9 quarterback in the country. Very mobile guy, good passer, decommitted from the Gamecocks and looked like he was heading to UCF. The Malzahn leaves in the dead of the night. I think they're kind of still in it. But Tom Loy from 24/7 Sports reports on thebigspur.com the other day that Duckworth could end up back at South Carolina. They're still talking. I like how smooth he is as both a passer and runner. Reminds me, I don't want to say Hooker from Tennessee because he had such a historic season, but is that kind of smooth, just operates really smoothly as an athlete and as a multi-sport athlete as well. So he's a player that, you got Landon Duckworth back in the class and the other 2 don't work out. I'm fine. And I think a lot of people, it's a discussion on thebigspur.com now. Everybody's got a different opinion. Between the 3, they're like, oh, this guy. And so that's actually a good discussion because nobody's taking shots and being mean and, all that. Because there's not really a right answer, at least not from what we can tell here. Remember the cautionary tale of Dylan Lonergan from earlier. So there you go. The next guy, is a newcomer to the board and is going to visit this spring. And somebody I've got a couple of connections to him that they fed me the info on him before they got in contact with the Gamecocks, and Carolina ended up offering him. That's former Florida State quarterback Brady Smeagol, California player from Newberry Park High School. Beamer went out to Palm Springs, and then the contact period came up, and he went and visited. I've heard his parents, and he was committed to Florida State, decommitted officially recently. Obviously, again, there's the Gus Malzahn's influencing this thing, folks. Ooh, the Gus bus. Because Gus comes to Florida State as the OC under Norvell, and Brady's not a Gus Malzahn quarterback. I mean, you got to at least be as mobile as Jared Stidham, and maybe he is, but he's more of an arm talent guy. Your classic pro style guy, probably reminds me a little of Jared Coker that played for Alabama and won the national championship that year, or AJ McCarron. A little bit more mobile than that. He's not a stand in the pocket statue. He can move around. Probably, a guy that you're going to have to protect. But again, when you look down the road, South Carolina keeps signing all these good offensive linemen. They should be able to protect, and they sign a bunch of receivers. So you need a guy that can throw the ball, and he can throw the ball. Really good arm talent. I mean, a player that I think is really good, and he is the number 5 quarterback in America out of Newberry Park, California. I know people are going to be hesitant because it's a California quarterback, and we remember the Ryan Helinski situation, but I think it's pretty obvious Helinski was a special situation. I'm not a huge, and I think some DJ from Clemson and FSU is coming in there too. There's FSU again. But I wouldn't worry about that. Every player's different. And again, if you do sign a quarterback from Cali, and you always run the risk of players further from home getting homesick and want to come back. But if he's committed to Florida State, he was willing to come across the country and come south anyway. However, I think that's why you recruit good ones every year, because if you do what you're supposed to do at quarterback, and do well at it, succeed, it's not as simple as just deciding you're going to do it. You have to actually land some players. Then, you're going to lose some. And that's just the way modern quarterback recruiting is these days. I mean, Ohio State stacks them up, player behind player behind player behind player. And they had to go to the portal and get their starter this year from Kansas State and Will Howard. So, if Ohio State sometimes has to hit the portal, everybody will. And I think transfer quarterbacks in this era have done quite good. I think that's the one position you could look at and go, sometimes it's good to get to another team and play, and a lot of times that works out for the other team. I mentioned Kentucky earlier. Sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time, look at Diego Pavia at Vandy, how he changed that program as an example. But Brady Smeagol going to visit around spring practice, and I think he'll set up an official that should come any day now. We're going to go through all the official visits scheduled. There's a bunch of them that came in yesterday, and there should be more today as the June period is looking hot. That June 20th weekend, boy. And this next guy is who is scheduled to come in then. He's the only one with an officially scheduled. Officially. And that's Jared Curtis. Everybody, this is the one everybody likes because he visited during the season. He's shown a lot of interest. He's got good clips, good highlight clips. Does a little Mahomes arm angle action, and is mobile. 6'4", 225, was committed to Georgia. Oregon is out there for him. I would say I like where they sit, but I also like where the Gamecocks sit. The transition from Loggins to Shula did not seem to slow Carolina's momentum, though he was very close with Dowell Loggins. I've heard his parents like it. Nashville, Who's Carolina had out of Nashville? They got a couple of players. Trey Knox was probably the last one from Murfreesboro. But this guy, I don't know that he's the number two quarterback in the country, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, and all these guys are top 10 at their position, which is outstanding considering they're all out of state. It shows you fans when Williams-Brice Stadium's rocking and it's on national TV. These kids take notice, and they take notice of players like Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders and all those guys, Dylan Stewart and those guys. They know, trust me, they watch TikTok and uh, Instagram, and they see you. They see the program. So, can South Carolina get Jared Curtis? I feel better about it now than maybe I did a month ago. It just kind of feel, what are they going to arrive at? Because there's an NIL element, but that's been discussed. And my understanding is, Carolina's rolled that out for him, and everybody's kind of comfortable. Is he going to be a guy that's going to want to come compete for the job and understand that there's other quarterbacks here and he may not win the job? Um, could we see a Quinn Ewers situation where he goes, doesn't win it, and then just immediately hightails it to somewhere else? I don't know that he's going to end up at Georgia based on some things I was told recently. Again, I like Oregon. Oregon seems to be just cycling through the portal guys. But South Carolina gets this guy. I mean, that's obviously a big deal. Even if he doesn't play, it was freshman year. But that's kind of the key. I think he's looking for playing time early, and I don't know that Shane Beamer doesn't guarantee that to anyone. And you don't do it. Same thing, same concept as overpaying. You don't promise people you're going to start. That blows up on you all the time, especially at a position as important as quarterback. So, but I don't know that there's necessarily demand there, and I don't know that that's something that can't be worked out. But and I'm not saying he wouldn't come in and win the job. He's good, but you're going from Tennessee high school football to the SEC. There's probably going to be some kind of transition. And he does play at a private school in Nashville, but I looked it up, and just like South Carolina, Tennessee has like a SCISA level, and then high school league is the public schools. Nashville Christian's one of the private schools in Tennessee that plays with the publics. And there's a lot of schools around Nashville like that. Like Bobby Bentley's coaching at Battleground Academy now. Alma mater of one Bill King. You can catch me on Bill King on Thursdays. Thursday mornings around 9:20 Eastern. Always on there talking Gamecocks. And Bobby Bentley's the head coach there now. Montgomery Bell Academy obviously is well known. There's a lot of those powerhouse Tennessee private schools. Eric Kimmery coaches at the Baylor School. That's in Chattanooga, but they're a powerhouse as well. So it's a different level than, say, a Hammond or Heathwood Hall or Ben Lippen, somebody like that. So the level of competition is just kind of average. It's not, he's not down playing in South Florida or Gwinnett County or Texas, where you got some teams that have just as much talent as a D2 school or junior college. I mean, it is, competition can play a factor. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does. But it just depends. But he's certainly a very talented player. And I'll tell you this too. I mentioned how good the Nick Harbor publicity was on this day back in 2023, 2 years ago. Jared Curtis would bring equal. It would just make a statement, folks. A big statement. But then there's pressure that comes with that too. If Jared Curtis redshirts and Cutter Woods or Aaron Nolan or Dante Reno, why is he sitting? That sucks. That's one of the down. There's some drawbacks of doing what I've done with recruiting and the popularity of it is that There's not the media doesn't understand it, or the mainstream people that cover college football, the legacy media, whatever you want to call it. Things are changing. But a lot of folks don't understand that. Even the recruiting media doesn't understand. Well, why isn't he playing? He's good. Well, you don't really understand. You don't know. It's even people like in the NFL scouts, college scouts, college coaches. Nobody knows until they get there because the speed of the game is different, and you can simulate it all you want, but you don't know. And I read the stupidest article I've ever read in my life one time when God, it was on a blog. It wasn't even anybody's ever heard of. And you have these that pop up on Google News. It's like these coaches are wasting this guy's talent. And I'm like, he's a true freshman. This is football. He's probably not strong enough to play or matured enough physically to play. That happens in football. There is a reason they have JV teams in high school. Because obviously you're dealing with not only football players, but young football players. That's one of the things that it's never going to be the pros, people, because in the pros, yes, there is some development from rookie year. There's a practice squad. They can bring guys along, but that's the best of the best of the best. And they are way closer to finished products than high school kids. Because when you're recruiting high school kids, you're casting a net all over the country. And there are thousands to pick from. I mean, it's not like, oh, these guys played at these colleges. Let's go pick. I mean, NFL guys have it a little easier. So nobody's wasting talent when a player's not playing his freshman year. And that's football. Because I think some of you are probably like, well, what about Cam Scott? I feel like Lamont is wasting his talent. Oh, no, I can assure you that's Cam Scott's not playing because of Cam Scott and how he plays. That's unfortunate, but that's another topic for another day. Maybe we'll dive into that on the show later today. So there's your three: Landon Duckworth, Jared Curtis, Brady Smeagol. Drop it in the comments who you like. If you don't know about these guys, go look them up on 24/7 Sports. They're all three in the top 10 quarterback prospects for the class of 2026. You want to get in on the conversation as to, who you think should be the backup to Lenoris next year. I would appreciate that too. I think that it should be exciting. We'll say that here on signing day, the unofficial close to the previous cycle. It should be exciting that South Carolina has three top 10 quarterbacks interested in it. They may not get any of the three. They may have two that want to come and have to make a decision. So who knows? Who knows? But you give me any of these three guys right now, folks, great. And they're already recruiting 2027 quarterbacks. I can't believe 2027. Man, it'll be 40 years since the 87 Gamecock team, which, by the way, Beamer's going into his fifth year. I think that was Joe Morrison's fifth year as well. We're getting to the time of the year where I always go back and look and see, well, coach is going into his fifth year. What's everybody else done in year five? I know Sparky Woods and Brad Scott got fired, and Lou Holtz lost to Clemson 63-17, so those weren't good. Will Muschamp also got fired. So I don't know. I don't know that this is the expectations are probably much more like 1987 than those years. Nevertheless, please sure to catch Inside the Gamecocks, the show, later today. Phil and I will be rocking and rolling through 2 hours. We've got some new features coming up on the show. Mike Morgan will be back in with us at some point. He's going to split between Jamie. Jamie's going to be on, obviously, from 10 to 12. I'll be on with Jamie today. I think 2 small segments because Paul Maneri, head baseball coach at South Carolina, is going to be giving Jamie an interview right before the first pitch of the season. Paul's great. This will be the 3rd time he's been on the show. We had Kingston on a lot too, and we have a good relationship with that program. And of course, we'll have complete coverage with opening day. But I'm going to slide in, talk a little ball and then football, and then Jamie's going to talk to Paul Maneri and then slide back out, and then I'll be back, and then we'll have the show. So on Wednesdays, you get a lot of JC, but did want to break down those 3 quarterbacks Again, the only one to officially schedule a visit as of right now, and I haven't checked since I've been recording this, obviously, is Jared Curtis. And that's that big weekend of the 20th. So, boy, any of these guys would be really, really good. Like I said, it's a good sign that the program continues to attract this level of player. You know, I think you guys could feel really good about that out there in Gamecock land, and you know, that's that's always a good feeling to know that the most important position on the field probably should continue to be in good hands. They won't all be great. There'll be a bust. There'll be a guy that ends up winning the job that's not that good. You can't avoid it these days. But I think the way you combat that is you recruit your butt off and always have interest in good, talented quarterbacks. And in 2026, the Gamecocks certainly do. JC Shurburtt signing off on coffee. Everybody have a wonderful Wednesday, and I'll be back on the morning show and the show later today. See you, folks. Holla at you soon.